Hello and welcome to this edition of India Global. I'm your host Rika Roy. Let's dive into the headlines at this hour. Global stock market in free fall as Donald Trump announces sweeping tariffs. Japan, India and China hit hard. Benjamin Netanyahu has announced a last-minute visit to Washington to meet with Donald Trump, where the Israeli leader is expected to discuss Iran, the war in Gaza and tariffs with the US president. The Crown Prince of Dubai is expected to make an official two-day visit to India. The visit will be a boost to India-UAE economic commercial cooperation. Hamas fires barrage of rockets at cities in Israel's south. Israel conducts airstrikes, issues evacuation orders. Tamil delegation leader M.A. Sumanthiran shares insights from his meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, emphasizing the critical need to realize the ideals of the 1987 Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. He discusses the Tamil community's long-standing push for meaningful devolution of power. Hello and welcome. Here's our top story. World stocks plunged on Monday as US President Donald Trump showed no sign of backing away from his sweeping tariff plans, and investors bet the mounting risk of recession could see the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates as early as May. Donald Trump has brushed off the market turmoil caused by his sweeping tariffs, likening the measures to medicine as panicked investors continued a massive sell-off of global stocks. Digging in on his so-called reciprocal tariffs, Trump said he would not back down unless the other countries balance their trade with the US. The US president said that he had spoken with many foreign leaders over the weekend who were dying to make a deal.
To go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs, they moved it to Mexico, they moved it to Canada, they moved a lot of it to China, and it's not sustainable. We're not going to do it.
I'm joined at this hour by Neeraj Shah, who's the executive editor of NDTV Profit. Neeraj, Donald Trump has injected massive uncertainty into the world economy. What next?
Yeah, Rika, thank you for this. And the immediate point to keep in mind is a 4% downtick on the S&P 500. If indeed the S&P 500 were to close 4% lower, then this will be the first time since 1930, since the Great Depression, that we'll have 3 consecutive days of over 4% gash for the S&P 500. But, those numbers aside, I think all eyes out whether there is some bit of compromise that select nations have with the US before April 9th or no. If that were to happen, maybe there's a bit of a relief out here. If not, then it's uncertainty continuing for the time frame, continued near-term time frame. And independent of whether India is a relatively insulated economy or not, which it is, because we have 2% of our overall exports to the US. So it's not a very large impact on India from a macroeconomic perspective, but equity markets don't like uncertainty. And that is what they're getting in huge dollops right now. Suffice to say that might continue.
What the cool. Well, we are joined by Jeffrey Dennis, who is an expert on emerging markets. Jeffrey, Donald Trump has sent shockwaves across the world with his tariff slaps. Tell us, where do you see the US markets heading now?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think unless anything changes from what we know so far, and obviously the big debate will be whether on April the 9th he will truly introduce all of these so-called reciprocal tariffs. I think the April the 5th announcement or apparent, introduction of the 10% base tariff for everybody, that was, I think, a given. The issue will be the reciprocal tariffs on the 9th. Now, if he goes ahead and imposes those, I think the selling goes on for a while longer. I think what's happening here now is you are in a position where the US is heading for recession without any question, in my view. And a typical pre-US recession sell-off in stocks will be around 30%. So we may be over halfway there, but we wouldn't be there just yet. So I think it all depends on what action comes from the White House. I mean, we got no respite over the weekend, as you've already said. No backtracking, no backsliding. And until we get some sense that he's backing off on some of these tariffs, or doing deals with individual countries, I think you'll find the market is still going to be under pressure for a while. Now, what's interesting to me, if I can just say this one more thing at the moment, is that the futures were down 1,600 points at one point on the Dow early this morning when I first woke up. They're now down, quote unquote, only 900. So there may be some sense of the US trying to get bring some stability in here. But bottom line is you need something from Trump. Otherwise, there's no obvious reason why you would get much of a bounce.
Jeffrey, Neeraj here, and thanks for joining in. Good talking to you at this hour. Now, China has retaliated. What if some of the other nations were to also show retaliation, even as some Asian countries are trying to negotiate with the US? If we see more retaliation from EU and some other countries, would that make the markets more nervous?
Yes, it would. I mean, I think the Chinese imposition of 35% tariffs across the board on US goods was really the confirmation that we are effectively now in a global trade war. And this, I think, surprised people towards the end of the week as well. Now, the amount of retaliation from other areas like the EU has been relatively limited. And I think that's probably because what countries would like to do is to reduce the temperature here of this trade situation, as opposed to cranking it up. China probably feels it's got the economic power to crank it up. And that's a choice they're making. And I think that's maybe not a bad choice for China. But at the end of the day, if you were to see more countries retaliating along the style of China, you would just intensify the global trade war. And I think for a period of time, therefore, global stocks would continue to fall.
Can Asia enter? So the odds of the US recession went up 67% to 67% the last I checked at a private survey. Can Asia, because of the higher tariffs on Asia, also enter into a recessionary phase, stroke recession, Jeffrey?
I think it's done. We should look at this country by country. China is not in recession, won't be in recession, but it feels like a recessionary rate of growth. Obviously, they're trying to target 5% growth in 2025. The government. Good luck with that. I think it's going to be quite a lot lower than that, probably in the 2 to 3% range. I think Taiwan is vulnerable because of the immense role of the chip sector in the economy, and also, of course, the role of TSMC in the Taiwan market, TSMC being the biggest stock in the emerging market index. Korea has got a lot of vulnerability to the US because of a wide variety of sectors. And as I've said many times on this network, I think India is relatively protected. I mean, it doesn't mean to say the growth won't be perhaps a little lower, but I do not see a recession in India. And reasons for that would include limited trade ties between India and the US compared to other countries. Clearly, Modi, I think, would like to stay in good terms with Trump, and I think that would be something that could lead to some sort of a deal. And also, of course, we're getting a weaker dollar, which will help stabilize the rupee. And we're getting massive drops in the price of oil, which are also very good for India. So I think India not going in recession. Taiwan could be the biggest risk. China, I think, slows down sharply.
Jeffrey, point well noted. Oil, DXY, plus the Reserve Bank of India is on an overdrive when it comes to giving the support. The question, though, is, can India suffer? Can the Indian markets suffer, even if the economy does not and probably corporate earnings do not suffer too much?
Well, I'm not saying the Indian economy won't slow down a bit as a result of all of this. I think it probably will see lower growth than would otherwise be the case without this mad trade war that's going on here globally. I'm just answering your question directly. I don't see a recession in India, but if you were to get a slowdown in GDP, that would put a bit of pressure on corporate earnings. And frankly, when global stock markets are selling off, sort of across the board, I think India would be very lucky to escape that. Now, I think India, and it's not much talked about at the moment, I think India is a low beta market in emerging market terms. It didn't go down anything like as much as Hong Kong did overnight, or Taiwan, or even Korea. Having said all of that, and this is a slight change of subject, if you forgive me, is that the area of the world that appears to me to be most protected from all of this is actually Latin America ex-Mexico, because those countries have only got 10% tariffs on them. So I think you'll see some investor money heading towards Latin America at the margin. But I don't see any reason why. I think the Indian market will remain under pressure while global markets continue to fall, if they do so, and but still in a more controlled way, if that's an appropriate word to use in these crazy environments.
Yes, but assuming, Jeffrey, that we do not hear any signs of agreements in the next 2-3 days, and because including the S&P, a lot of markets have sold off quite a bit, do you foresee a pause to the selling, even if we don't hear conciliatory statements, or do you believe that the selling, whether it will not be 10% or 8%, but it could well be 2-3%, but do you believe downsides will continue?
I think the downside from here is probably relatively limited. I think even in the US, even without any pullback by Trump on these tariffs, I think we are probably 5% from the bottom, maybe something of that order. I mean, after today, it looks like another weekday. So I think we're somewhere near the bottom, because at the end of the day, I think it's going to create some opportunities for long-term investors to take a look forward and say, I'd like to, do some buying. But at this point, without there any break in the news from Trump and the White House on these tariffs, without there being any obvious signs of a quote unquote deal between some of these countries and the US, it's not clear what's going to stop the selling at this particular moment. Now, having said that, the pressure is on the Federal Reserve without any question now. Now, obviously, tariffs are inflationary. The danger is going to be, remember the word transitory, the danger is going to be the Fed is going to say the tariff pressures on inflation are transitory. Maybe there will be, maybe not. They certainly will have an upward shift adjustment to the inflation rate, to the CPI. But I think the pressure's on the Fed now to cut interest rates. And you've got to believe, I think, that we may be heading for 3 to 4 rate cuts this year, as opposed to 2 rate cuts. And were that to happen quite quickly, although the next meeting's not until May, I think that would be something that could stop the selling. But what you really need to stop the selling is signs that either he doesn't put these reciprocal tariffs in place in full on Wednesday, or you start to get deals with certain countries to take some of the tariffs off or reduce them in return for hopefully these countries reducing their trade surpluses with the US.
Last question, Jeffrey. Because we haven't quite, a lot of people drawing parallels to how damaging COVID correction was, but it was a swift pullback because central banks acted in coordination. This time around, that may not or will not be the case. That also exacerbates the pressure on risk assets like equities worldwide.
Yeah. I think the parallel with COVID is interesting because of the scale of the losses and the speed of the losses. But as you say, central banks acted in a coordinated way. Plus, of course, there was massive fiscal action, particularly in countries like the US and also in China, in response to COVID. So I think the scale of the sell-off will be probably in the end not much different from COVID. But I think the recovery will probably be a little slower, because the central banks will not know whether to move quickly or not based on the inflation story. And also, there will be ongoing headlines, unfortunately, seemingly every day forever, from the White House on trade, and we just don't know what those headlines will be. But I 5% lower than here, 6-7% lower from here. I would be a big buyer.
Right.
I'm just not sure quite there yet. And the next big day will be April the 9th, Wednesday, to see whether those reciprocal tariffs go on at all, or in total, or only in part.
Indeed, Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining in. Jeff Dennis, ex-UBS, tracked emerging markets so closely for so many years. So the perfect voice to have in such a situation, Rika. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Neeraj, for getting us all those details. Meanwhile, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te announced that Taipei would not retaliate to the sweeping new U.S. tariffs, offering zero tariffs as basis for talks within the U.S. With the U.S., in fact, Taiwan was hit by 32% tariffs in the expansive import levies announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. U.S. tariffs, however, do not apply to semiconductors, a major Taiwanese export. Lai said his government would instead encourage the purchasing of products from the U.S. to reduce the trade deficit between the two countries. Listen to what he had to say.
面对美国的对等关税，台湾没有计划采取关税报复。企业对美国的投资承诺，只要符合国家利益，也不会有任何改变。但我们要让美国清楚知道，台湾对于美国经济发展的贡献。更重要的是，我们要积极掌握全球经济情势的变化，加强台美产业合作，提升台湾产业在全球供应链的地位。
Time now for a very quick break on the show. More on the other side. Stay tuned. The Crown Prince of Dubai will visit India for 2 days starting tomorrow. This would be Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed Al Maktoum's first official visit to India as the Crown Prince of Dubai, and he will be accompanied by several ministers, senior government officials and a high-level business delegation. Prime Minister Modi will host a working lunch for the visiting dignitaries on Tuesday, and the Crown Prince is also scheduled to hold meetings with External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. After Delhi, the Crown Prince will visit Mumbai and will also participate in a business roundtable with prominent leaders from the world of business. The interaction will strengthen India-UAE economic and commercial cooperation across traditional and futuristic ideas. I'm joined by my colleague Mohammad Ghazali for more on the story. Ghazali, this green shoots of collaboration, would you say it is good, given that US has slapped such high tariffs on India, and now India is looking at India-UAE corridor to have better trade deals?
Oh, certainly. See, this visit will serve multiple purposes. One, that the Crown Prince himself is a Deputy Prime Minister and also happens to be the Minister of Defence of UAE. During his visit, he's also going to meet Rajnath Singh, our own Defence Minister, and then you can expect some MOUs when it comes to defence deals between India and UAE. UAE also happens to be our very reliable partner in West Asia. The current situation in West Asia, we all know that it is in turmoil for the last 1.5 years. And India also happens to be the only country in Global South which has very good relations with the Arab nations as well as Israel. So that gives India an advantageous position. So certainly that issue will also come up for discussion when the Crown Prince will meet the Prime Minister as well as the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jai Shankar. Besides that, his meeting in Mumbai is very critical, considering two issues. One, that it is a business forum and India is heavily invested in UAE. The UAE's government has shown a lot of interest in India's Make in India program as well. The second geostrategic relevance is that UAE also happens to be one of the very key partners when it comes to the India Middle East European Corridor, or IMEC, which was conceptualized during the G20 summit when it was held in India back in 2022. all these issues will come up for discussion. The visit is happening at a time when West Asia is in turmoil, when you have this US reciprocal tariff issue, which has troubled almost every nation. So these issues will come up for discussion. And also, Indians also form a large part of the UAE's population when it comes to the diaspora population is concerned. So that factor is certainly very important, and bilateral relations between the two countries will be improved, but the focus will be on economic and defense cooperation.
Thank you very much, Ghazali, for getting us all those details. Moving on, the conflict in the Middle East continues to intensify as Hamas launched rockets targeting cities in southern Israel on Sunday. The Palestinian militant group claimed the attack was in response to what it called Israeli massacres of civilians in Gaza. According to Israel's military, around 10 rockets were fired, with most intercepted. One person is receiving treatment for shrapnel injuries. In response, Israel conducted airstrikes and issued evacuation orders for parts of Gaza. Local health authorities in Gaza report that Israeli strikes have resulted in at least 39 deaths across the region. Following the rocket attacks, the Israeli military posted an evacuation notice on X, directing residents of several districts in Deir al-Bala in central Gaza to evacuate. The statement described the order as final warning. According to reports, several powerful Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq are prepared to disarm for the first time to avoid the threat of an escalating conflict with the Trump administration. As per the reports, the move to diffuse tensions follows repeated warnings issued privately by US officials to the Iraqi government since Donald Trump took power in January. The officials reportedly told Baghdad that unless it acted to disband the militias operating on its soil, America could target the groups with airstrikes. The leader of France's national rally RN party, Marine Le Pen, told supporters that she would not give up despite being found guilty of embezzling European Union funds and banned for running for office. But large-scale protests against the move did not materialize on Sunday.
Voilà donc qu'il faudrait m'éliminer de la vie politique, sans voie de recours possible, au nom d'un soi-disant trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, concept purement et simplement inventé pour l'occasion. Pardon, mais le principal et même l'unique trouble à l'ordre public démocratique, c'est bien celui qui consiste à empêcher l'unique souverain, le peuple, de s'exprimer.
Gujarat Titans pacer Ishant Sharma has been fined 25% of his match fee and handed one demerit point for breaching the IPL Code of Conduct under Article 2.2 during his team's match against Sunrisers Hyderabad. The Article 2.2 of IPL Code of Conduct pertains to abuse of cricket ground equipment either intentionally, recklessly or negligently. Despite the incident, Gujarat Titans secured convincing 7-wicket win over Sunrisers Hyderabad, marking their third consecutive victory and moving them up to the second place on the IPL points table. Time now for a quick break on the show. More on the other side. Stay tuned. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington in a last-ditch effort to negotiate a better trade deal days after the US imposed 17% tariffs on Israel. Netanyahu is the first foreign leader to travel to Washington in an attempt to negotiate trade pact with the PM meeting top US officials in Washington. This is the second meeting between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House in January and comes after the resumption of hostilities in the Gaza Strip. Trump has pressed Tehran for a new deal on its nuclear program, though little progress has been made, with widespread speculation that Tel Aviv, possibly with US help, might launch a military strike on Iranian facilities if no agreement is reached. I'm joined at this hour by Brahmachalani, strategic affairs expert, and Dr. Kinraj Janged, visiting faculty at Ben Gurion University in Israel, the director of Center for Israel Studies at the O.P. Jindal University. To Mr. Chalani, Netanyahu's second trip since Trump was inaugurated in January comes after the resumption of hostilities in Gaza Strip. What will be topmost on agenda, tariff or hostilities, when the two men meet?
The two will be discussing several issues: the tariff issue, the war in Gaza, Israel-Turkey relations, Iran, and the International Criminal Court. Trump's sweeping tariffs have not spared even Israel, even though Trump has been quite pro-Israel. He has been pro-Israel since his first term. In his first term, Trump moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He also supported Israeli territorial claims on the West Bank. And in his second term, he has actually pushed this proposal to permanently resettle the entire Gazan population in other countries and bring Gaza under U.S. control. This is something that the Israeli government seems to be implementing to some extent by renewing this military offensive. As it is, Gaza has been devastated, but this renewed Israeli military offensive makes things worse. So there are a lot of issues that the two leaders will be discussing, but certainly, as you point out, the fact that the two leaders are meeting for the second time in 2.5 months underscores the close bonds between these two leaders.
Dr. Janged, on tariffs, how successful do you think Netanyahu will be in negotiating the tariff deal, and how do you foresee that impact US-Israel relations?
Thank you. I don't think Netanyahu got much to actually leverage things for the tariff concessions. The announcement of Netanyahu's visit to America was through Donald Trump. There wasn't a news about it in Israel. Israeli Prime Minister's office didn't say anything. He was just supposed to go to Hungary in a trip that he, hardly sold to his own domestic constituency. But nevertheless, he went there because Hungary hosted him by withdrawing from the international warrant against him. So he wanted to score a diplomatic small victory by saying, look, I can travel to different parts of the world and the warrant against him doesn't hold much deterrence. So I think he was on this symbolic ride, and then the tariffs were announced and he was in America. So I don't think he can really get any concession from 17% that the Israeli state has come under. In Israel, for the last 3 days, there has been a panic in the industry and trade and manufacturing. And there is an estimate that more than 40,000 people, according to the estimate of the Association of the Manufacturing Sector in Israel, will lose jobs. And they really don't have any way to see a bright outcome when it comes to tariff. But as Brahmachalani hinted, for Netanyahu, far more pressing issues are the issues of war in Gaza, hostages, and the Iranian issue. You suggested that Israel might be the one that will carry a strike against Iran. It seems to be the part of the Trump's strategy against Iran. Remember, he invited Iran through a very aggressive letter to negotiate. And Iran was very confident to say, we don't want to negotiate with you for anything. So I think in that very abrasive denial of any negotiations with him by Iranian leaders, Trump is leveraging military deployment in the Pacific, as well as he's letting Israel make those moves, thinking that, listen, if you don't negotiate with me, I can let Israel carry a strike. That in any case, Israeli leaders really look for an excuse to do it.
Right.
I think it's tariff will not be the top of the agenda. Maybe it's the news of the moment, but Netanyahu's visit has to do with ongoing war in Gaza and the Iranian issue.
Let's stay on that, Mr. Chalani. Iran and Israel tension is also on the rise. Reports are that US has transferred a second THAAD battery and 2 Patriot batteries to Israel amid rising tensions. How do you see this situation now?
Israel enjoys a regional preeminence, militarily, diplomatically, economically. It's a small country, but it's dominant militarily. It doesn't have any real state adversary. Its adversaries today are non-state actors like Hamas and Hezbollah. But Iran was located further from Israel. Israel and Iran don't share borders. Israel looks at Iran as a adversary down the line. Iran is a powerful country. It's a major regional power, and it won't be easy for Israel or even the US to take on Iran or to launch strikes against Iran and not expect Iran to retaliate. One has to remember what happened to the US invasion of Iraq. Iran is much stronger than Iraq was at that time. In fact, in the Islamic world of the countries located around Israel, Iran is the most powerful of the states. And therefore, both Washington and the Bibi administration will have to tread very cautiously. They can make all these threats. They can carry out cyber attacks. They can do other things. But any kind of direct military intervention will result in a war that neither Israel nor the US would like.
Right, particularly since Donald Trump has also been advocating to stop wars at this point in time. Dr. Jangid, let me go back to the issue of tariffs. What do you think will the impact be on the US-Israel free trade agreement?
Israel Free Trade Agreement is unique in a way because in 1985, when America signed it, it was exceptionally with very small Middle Eastern country, and then US did it with other countries. The America's greater military and strategic relationship with America with Israel is, I don't know if you lost me in between. So in terms of commodities, Israel and America share much greater defense and military intelligence business in the realm of defense and warfare. And I think that relationship is as dear to America as it is to the Israelis. So yes, when it comes to very strategic military business and arms supply that Israel buys from America, Israelis develop the technology, but even a small gun is then produced in America by American companies, and then Israel buys from America. During this 1.5 year war, when Joe Biden put a stop on some ammunitions, Israelis actually made a more self-reflective note about themselves that maybe this is the time we don't rely on America to manufacture arms for us. So I think there is a greater realization within the Israeli defense establishment that maybe it is not so much in the self-interest to just sell every technology to American companies and then buy from the American companies. So maybe that relationship will come to some kind of a rescue. But when it comes to the general tariff, I think Israel will live with the 17% reality.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jangid and Mr. Brahmachalani, for joining me on with this discussion at this hour. With that, a quick break on the show. More on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Rivers have risen and flooding has intensified across the regions of US South and Midwest, threatening communities already significantly imperiled by days of heavy rainfall and wind, claiming the lives of at least 18 people. Although the rain has begun to recede in some of the most severely impacted areas of Arkansas, Tennessee and Kentucky, water levels continue to rise in various communities, inundating homes and businesses and submerging roads. After US exited the World Health Organization earlier this year, taking a huge toll on agency's funding, WHO is now reportedly proposing to reduce staff numbers and the scale of its work as it slashes its budget by just over 1/5. US President Donald Trump's administration withdrew from the WHO upon taking office in January, saying the Global Health Agency had mishandled the COVID-19 pandemic and other international health crises. The US is by far the UN Health Agency's biggest financial backer, contributing around 18% of its overall funding. M.A. Sumanthiran, the leader of the Tamil delegation, spoke with NDTV World about their concerns in their meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The delegation emphasized several critical points. Mr. Sumanthiran stated that Tamils are still awaiting a fair resolution to the Tamil national question and highlighted that India remains the only nation to have taken action on this issue. Listen.
I have with me one of the leaders of the Tamil delegation, and in fact someone who led the delegation yesterday when they met the Prime Minister in Colombo, Mr. M.A. Sumanthiran, who is also the General Secretary of ITAK and a man who's been a former Member of Parliament. So thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Let me start by asking you, you led the delegation to meet the Prime Minister yesterday. He gave about almost an hour. What, according to you, were the main issues that you highlighted or the main points that you highlighted in your meeting with the Prime Minister?
The Tamil community has been waiting for a reasonable political solution to what we call the Tamil national question. India is the only country that has actually intervened in this matter. And in 1987, there was an accord signed, Indo-Lanka Accord. Unfortunately, the ideals of that accord are still to be realized. Although there was a change in the structure of governance, provincial councils were established and so on. What was envisaged in that accord is yet to be fulfilled. And so we brought to the attention of the Prime Minister that India, being a signatory to that agreement with Sri Lanka, we wished that India take steps to influence and encourage Sri Lanka to fulfill those commitments that the Sri Lankan government has made towards the Tamil people in this country. And that is for greater devolution, a meaningful devolution of power to the regions.
And I think the provincial council elections is something that the Prime Minister also mentioned in the statement as well with President Tissanayake. So that is something that's very, I would imagine that that's something very important for New Delhi as well, given that it featured in the PM statement as well.
That's right. In fact, we thanked the Prime Minister. Our meeting was in the afternoon and we came to know that in the morning he mentioned that India has consistently stated in the last 5 years or so that the provincial councils have not been in extent, that elections must be held and provincial councils must function. So we thank the Prime Minister for that and we ask that that pressure be continued. But also we as a party and as the whole delegation yesterday have been of the opinion that the system of devolution that prevails, even on paper in the constitution, is insufficient to meet the aspirations of the Tamil people. India knows that well. There have been joint statements issued between the Indian Prime Minister and Sri Lankan President in the past, between the two foreign ministers in 2010, 11 and 12, stating that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution would be fully implemented, and then building upon it, meaningful devolution would be brought about. So we brought to the attention of the Prime Minister.
So when you raised this issue with the Prime Minister and the delegation that you were leading, what was the Prime Minister's response to it? Talk to us about what was his position, his government's position, and did he give any assurances? What was the conversation like?
Well, he did not disagree with the position, and what we told him is a consistent position of the Indian government all along.
Yes.
So I don't think it was necessary for him to reiterate that, but he did say that he had a word with the President with regard to provincial council elections. He has said that publicly too, and that he hoped that provincial council elections will be held soon after the local council elections are over in the month of May.
Mm-hmm. In fact, aspirations of Tamil people should be fulfilled was another statement that the Prime Minister did make in the press statements. So clearly this is something that's featuring quite prominently in his relationship with Sri Lanka as well. And is that something that you welcome as a Tamil leader?
Yeah, we very much welcome that because, as I said, there is an international bilateral agreement between the two countries. For so long, several decades, that has not been fully met yet. And to that extent, India has a definite involvement in the affairs of the Tamil people very particularly. The agreement was signed, we say, India signed that agreement on behalf of the Tamil people. And so, therefore, we have consistently engaged with the Indian government to prevail upon the Sri Lankan government that greater power devolution is a must.
Mm-hmm. And also the fact that there's a new government, there's President Dissanayke's government now in place since last year. Explain to us and highlight how if there is an attitude change in the present dispensation as against the previous ones, and is that something you brought up in your discussion with the Prime Minister?
Well, when we spoke to him about land grab, now that is another very serious issue that confronts us day-to-day life, he inquired as to whether it is continuing under the new dispensation as well. And we told him, well, it has not abated, it's continuing. So that question from him told us that he wanted to know whether there was an attitudinal change. We are also hoping that there is an attitudinal change with regard to communities that are inferior in numbers, and that a greater sharing of powers of governance will be met. They have given us various assurances, but in the 6 months or so of this new government, we haven't seen any progress as yet. And so that causes concern amongst our people that not even preliminary steps have been taken to achieve this goal. So we have been pressurizing the government that, all of us understand that they need time, but then you must start the process. And nothing has commenced as yet. So there is great apprehension among our people that this government will also go the way of the previous governments and that put this issue on the back burner and then just get on with their lives. So we are keen not to allow that to happen. There has been a great shift in the sense that after people's protest and in 2022, first time a Marxist party has
come to power and with some strong positions on some issues.
A big change in Parliament. They had only 3 members of Parliament, and now they have 159. So that's a sea change, and we are hoping that change will include the change with regard to sharing powers of governance with the Tamil people as well.
And finally, sir, the note on which your discussions with the Prime Minister that ended? If you could share with us, because yes, these are issues that are not new. These are not some things that the government of India has not taken a position on in the past. But every meeting, as you said, there is always hope, there is promise, and the fact that the Prime Minister made some comments in the press statements. I would like to understand, sir, the note at which your conversation with the Prime Minister ended, because that sort of, reflects which way it could go from.
Well, I requested the Prime Minister that we must continue this conversation, that we would like to visit New Delhi and continue a process. We must come to some kind of arrangement. One of the other members who spoke up from another party also said, we are from different parties, but we are willing to come together as one delegation and meet you. The Prime Minister's response was, yes, you are welcome anytime. Barring scheduling issues, we would welcome you. Even if you are in India for something else, you're always free to come and meet us at appropriate levels. There'll be meetings, but please come. We will take these concerns forward.
Final question, sir. From Colombo, Prime Minister, then from Anuradhapura, he went to Rameshwaram. He's gone to Tamil Nadu. He's raised the issue of Tamil Nadu fishermen as well. He's met the Tamil leaders. If you sort of connect the dots and put that all together, it does indicate that, he is trying to make an outreach to the Tamil people, both in India and, of course, in Sri Lanka as well.
Yes, of course, that approach we have seen in the Prime Minister for quite some time. With regard to the fishermen's issue, also we spoke to him. We told him that in 2016, I was part of a ministerial delegation when Honorable External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar was a Foreign Secretary, and we met with Madam Sushma Swaraj, and there was an agreement between the two countries that bottom trawling must stop. And I brought it to his attention that it is after that agreement was entered into between India and Sri Lanka that we banned bottom trawling here, and that I requested that bottom trawling must be banned in India as well, for the simple reason that it destroys the marine environment, ecology, the seabed is destroyed and so on. He spoke to us about the difficulty generally about encouraging people to abandon methods of fishing that they are used to other ways. We understand that quite well. So even in that respect, I would say that there was no disagreement between us that that this particular destructive method must come to an end. It's a question of working out how we move forward.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.